with Tanner now, and their topic was queering kink. So I'm going to ask them a few questions. The first question is, what about kink is intimate, and how does this intimacy challenge or differ from heteronormative intimacy? Where do we learn heteronormativity? Where do we learn kink? It's a huge question.
So kink is very intimate, as there's a lot more communication goes into it, and you also need a strong mental and emotional connections with the person you're doing the kink scene with, as a lot of kinks can be more strenuous, like mentally, physically, emotionally. So you need to have you really have that connection with the person to trust them and feel safe around them with certain types of kinks. Kink compared to more heteronormative intimacy is quite different and challenges more, as you need a more understanding, more preparation that goes into place with kink compared to more historical understandings of heteronormativity. And we learn heteronormativity from society, from people around us, and very much is ingrained into us the ways that quotation marks from this, like the way we're supposed to have sex and the way we're supposed to be intimate with people. So it's very much taught to us through our schooling and through what we see in media and what we see in just people around us talking. Whereas kink is quite different, as no one really teaches you how to have intimacy with kink. It's people learn online through, in some cases, porn, but porn's not always that great. Isn't always great for that, as there can be some problematic parts of it, but good to understand, some of the basic understandings of it. But historically, a lot of people learn kink through their community, like having an interest in terms of kink, certain type of kink, and going out and joining part of the community and find mentors within it to teach you the ways of that kink and how to interact with that kink, interact with other people who are into that kink.
Yeah, so there's a history of queer people who have taught kink, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Very much.
Cool. That's great. What role do labels play in kink, and how do those labels impact people's identities?
Roles play a pretty big labels play a pretty big role in kink, as even the label of kink is very much taboo, quotation around that, and viewed with certain connotations around it. So people being told, or people hearing someone's kinky, they get certain assumptions in their head, and even certain types of kink being labeled as a certain type of kink, or being into a certain type of kink, has those kind of connotations with it too. And even within the kink community, there's a lot of, based on the label of the kink you are interested in, and the type of kink you're interested in, there's this challenge of are you kinky enough to be to call yourself kinky? How is that work based on the level of kink and where you fall in the kink? Because there's so many kinks. There's almost a caste system within kink, because there's the lower end of the more vanilla, quotation vanilla type things, of smelling someone's armpit, compared to the upper end of it, which is BSM, and more into the hardcore, you would say, kinks. And it kind of impacts people's lives and who identify with it, as they get viewed a certain way. But there's a lot of positives to go with being labeled as kinky too, or like being labeled as a certain type of kink, because there's this freedom that goes with it, and like not being ashamed of what you're interested in, and letting people know that like this is who I am, and you can take it or leave it, but this is I am and who I am. So like you would know this, and there's this kind of unapologetic idea with like concept with it of like I am who I am, I know who I am, and this is who me. So like that's how it is.
Yeah.
There's
So, would you say that um, engaging in the kink community, people can gain a sense of community from that?
yes, very much so. There is a lot of community that can go into both positive and negative. Same with many different types of communities out there.
Hmm. And why
But
do you think that? Why do you think that kink fosters uh, community, a positive community space? Throwing that
um,
at you.
yeah, I it fosters this kind of community space in the community does, because for a lot of people they don't understand why am I different, or they think they're like different, than no one has this, like no one understands what they're going through of like being into a certain type of kink or like being kinky. But find those people and like who will accept you and will actually like understand what you're going through and actually be there to support you and teach you and like help you out in a way in a world that really looks down on most kinks and looks down on the kink community as being people of a certain type of way that isn't good. And like there's very much negative connotation that goes around kink, as I said. So having that community really gives you a defense mechanism or like a shell to kind of protect you.
Mm.
And even if someone doesn't accept you, these people were going to accept you. So
So it's very
it's
much a
good to have.
loving place.
Yes, it's very much a loving place, even if not everyone understands your specific kink. They understand kink as a whole because they have a kink of some sort or have gone through a similar thing with their kink.
Okay, I understand. And my third question is, how does kink exist on a spectrum? And where does vanilla end and kink begin?
Um, kink exists on a spectrum because there are so many kinds of kink. There's a kink for anything you could think of, from like A to Z. So there's a spectrum of like level of intensity that goes with kink. As I mentioned, like more the lower end of the spectrum is like the like something wearing a certain kind of thing in the bedroom, or like smelling someone's armpits, or like smelling something like that, compared to the higher end that is the more like quotations like hardcore of like BDSM and like that kind of. So there is this kind of spectrum people fall in between and like levels of intensity that goes with it. Um, and the question of like where's vanilla Andy kink begins is kind of hard to answer because it differs, and historically vanilla was like P&V, or like penis and vagina, like straight part, like don't mind my pun, and like sex, and like was used specifically for reproduction, and anything outside of that was viewed as like taboo or like in a way kinky because it was like outside of it. um
Hmm.
and it was viewed as not the norm. But also this question also is based on the person and like the time and place that you're in, because like every person has a different understanding of like what is vanilla, what is kinky, what is like the normal quotations around, excuse me, quotation marks around that. um so it based on different people, based on like how where they're raised, how they grew up, religion, identity, like family, like social understandings, like social media, what like their interest kind of plays a role in like what they view as vanilla versus kinky. Um, but also kink kind of breaks this binary down because there is, most people assume certain people's genders makes them have to be a certain way. So like men have to be like the dominant people, like they have to be like the one in power, they have to be like the top,
Hmm.
or people they're assumed to be masculine or present masculine have to be the straight kind of way, and like women like have to be quotation marks on that, have to be like submissive and stuff like that. Where kink kind of messes with that because you have people who are dominatrix, the women who are dominant, and you have people, no matter their race or sexual identity or like gender identity, can play whatever role they want to, and they can be whatever role they want to be within kink and not have to fit into society's view of the role they have to play based on the way they look or the way they act. So kink very much breaks us down, and you having by having people of any group play the role of like dominant or submissive that they want to, and
Mm,
giving that freedom of like you don't have to fit into society's role, like stereotype of like you have to play because of the way you look or who you are. So it
yeah.
very much
So
breaks down this binary.
it seems like kink can give everyone an opportunity to explore parts of themselves that they don't ever explore, or thinking about like, well, society says I should act like this, but really I don't want to do that. So it kind of gives you, it sounds like it gives you a break
Yeah,
sometimes.
it gives you this break and gives you this freedom to explore
Yeah,
sides of you that aren't really viewed as normal, quotation marks around that, normal in society. And it gives you that freedom to do what you want sexually within limits. Um,
yeah,
actually within limits and like without having to feel ashamed of it. And it gives you that freedom to do as you wish.
I see. Okay, well, thank you for your answers, Tanner. That's all the questions I have for you today. Um, I will call you now the kink master.
Uh, sounds good.